Today I'm going to be teaching you about two different niche industries, yoga and Pilates. I'm going to be giving you my personal recommendations for targeting consumers within these two niches and also some recommendations on product targeting as well. Now, what makes these two niches good to teach together is that a lot of people will think yoga and Pilates are pretty much the same thing if they have never done it before and they don't have any knowledge about it. However, there are actually some really key differences between these two, and they can be really important for affiliates to know about because it can help them to attract the consumers and to sell the products to them. Now, Pilates is a physical fitness discipline which is heavily focused on muscle control and the use of different kinds of apparatuses to assist the exercise. This type of exercise, this would be the one depicted here on the left, is something that is sometimes taught in a class at a specific Pilates business. However, you could also do Pilates at home by simply buying some of the equipment that you would need and also gaining some of the knowledge to do the exercises. So that might be buying training courses. Now, yoga, on the other hand, can actually have a number of different meanings. And it's important for affiliates to know about this because some of the keyword phrases that you might try to target may actually be talking about something else if you're not really familiar with this particular niche. So in order to bring in the correct people to your site and to properly target your content, you need to make sure you are actually targeting the correct thing and bringing the right kind of people in. So for some people, yoga may simply be a physical fitness discipline as well. But more often than not, it's really considered a more spiritual type of fitness program. Traditionally, yoga is a physical, mental, and spiritual practice. A lot of times this has been linked with Hinduism or Buddhism because the original creators of yoga came from these areas. Thousands of years ago, they were developing this kind of stuff. So when you're not really specific about what you're targeting, you may get people that are simply looking for information about yoga in terms of it being a philosophy, or even some kind of have considered it to be a religion even. But then you have other people who are just looking for information about how to do yoga exercises, and they don't care about any of the other stuff. So for that reason, I'm actually going to be focusing a lot on yoga training today, and I will still be covering Pilates towards the end of today's class in a little more detail. However, it is really more important that you understand about yoga to truly understand the differences between the two, and this is going to help you to pick a niche that you actually want to target, and so you can target it appropriately. Now, since you have all of these historical connections with yoga itself and the different kinds of meanings and the spiritual nature of it, this niche kind of becomes rather complex compared to other niches like Pilates, for example. Pilates does not have this kind of depth and history to it. The guy that created Pilates, for example, just died in 1967, whereas yoga has been around for thousands of years. So when you are learning about yoga, you'll see that there are all these different ways that you could go about targeting it as an affiliate. So you want to try to pick a very specific sub-niche within the yoga industry. Learn as much as you can about that, and then you'll be able to provide the correct, useful information to people. And this is going to help you to bring in the search engine traffic, and will also help to make your website more useful, help to build some value there with your consumers, and they will be much more likely to want to purchase products for you. Now, a big thing to remember is that yoga is really unique with all of that history behind it, and the fact that it comes from cultures that are not English-based. You have all of this terminology that is associated with yoga. In fact, there are easily hundreds of different terms. These are Sanskrit terms. You can use these types of terms within your content. And not only is it going to make you sound more like, you are a yoga expert instead of somebody who has no real in-depth knowledge about the subject. So it'll make you sound better to your consumers, make you sound like you do know what you're talking about. And it's also going to help you with search engine rankings. All that terminology is a goldmine of semantic keywords. So by using the relevant terminology on your website, you will help to boost the relevance of your pages in search rankings. Now, this big expanse of information that is available within this niche, and the way that it can easily confuse somebody that is brand new to it, makes for a really ripe situation for affiliates, because you can be the middleman, you can be the provider of that information. You digest the information and provide it to your visitors in a way that is easy to understand. Try to dumb it down a little bit, try to take some of the terminology out of it, but then still talk about the terminology and provide definitions for that terminology so people can kind of learn yoga instead of them having to essentially decode all of the information about it. Now, people that practice yoga are called yogis. Just to give you an example of how much terminology there really is within this niche. A male is known as a yogi, and a female is known as a yogini. Now I'm going to be pointing you guys to a website here in just a little bit where you can actually find a large listing of terminology for yoga along with definitions for them, so you can actually understand this stuff. And this will help you to be able to go out there and take expert yoga content and be able to digest it and to dumb it down for your website visitors. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about yoga itself. Some of this kind of involves yoga in the broad sense, but most of it is really geared towards how it is utilized in today's day and age, and not necessarily how it used to be. Although some of this stuff, some of these teachings of yoga do come from those ancient times. They've just essentially been modernized over and over again over the course of time. And that is why you have so many different kinds and aspects to yoga. And that's why it is such a complex niche. Well, the philosophical guidebook for the majority of modern yoga is called the Yoga Sutra. This guidebook is not necessarily something that is completely practiced within all yoga that is modern. However, most modern yoga is derived from some combination of the Yoga Sutra. It might be part of it, it might be a number of different parts of it, or some of them might still be practicing the whole thing. Now, the large majority of people that are practicing yoga, when you typically think about somebody going out and taking a yoga class, they're most likely not practicing the Yoga Sutra. They're probably not doing all of these different steps. Most likely what they are doing is step number 3, postures. This is the actual exercise part of yoga, what people typically view as the exercise. However, there are all of these other aspects to it. And there are still plenty of people that want to know about all this stuff. Maybe they get into yoga as a class for a while and they want to start learning more about it. Maybe they start wanting to branch out into this type of stuff. So while the postures is going to be your major focus in terms of what most of the consumers will be interested in, you can certainly still attract consumers within this market by trying to target other aspects of this Yoga Sutra. So I wanted to be sure to include all of this here. And I'm not going to try to pronounce all of these because I would likely butcher every single one of them. Now, the whole goal of the Yoga Sutra, all of these different practices, the goal is to kind of work your way from one up to the top. And the postures is really just the third step of it. Before that, though, you have things like moral code, also known as restraints. Then you have your personal conduct. Within either of these, you actually have a number of different subcategories that can be seen in this chart over here on the right. So when somebody is following yoga in its entirety, they will start at the bottom and they will work their way up. And the point is to focus yourself inward until you reach the top level, which is a level of union, absorption, enlightenment, or liberation. Beyond all of that, though, a lot of people still just look at it as exercise. But there are tons of people that are into the more philosophical side. And this is also why it is kind of borderline being a religious type of discipline for some people as well. Now, there are a lot of different types of yoga out there. I mentioned before that some people just practice the exercise part, some people practice other aspects of it, and some people might go for the whole shebang. Well, as a result, and because of all these different changes and interpretations over time, you end up with a lot of different kinds of yoga. So while you could certainly try to target all of them, as you likely know, I recommend for you to not try to tackle something like that because it would be an absolutely enormous project. There are companies that do target, maybe not necessarily every aspect and every type of yoga, but they will target 10 or 12 different kinds altogether. They might be similar or popular different types of yoga. However, these are multi-million-dollar companies with a staff of who knows how many people, but they have enough people to sit down and churn out this kind of content on a daily basis. Whereas if you're working as a single person, your best bet is going to be to go after one single discipline of yoga. Now, your mainstream yoga, Hatha yoga, is considered to be what most people think of when you just say the word yoga. However, there are still a lot of other popular types in the USA besides that one. And I've given a big list of these down at the bottom here. Again, feel free to go back and take a look at these later. You can either pause the video for a moment and Google some of these keywords, see what kind of traffic there is that goes behind them, or you can even take a look at the slideshow ebook. I will be including one of those with this class for you guys because of the extensive amount of keywords like this that most of them are not easy to remember English-based words. So the point here of giving you this whole list is to give you a starting point. You may still not want to target all aspects of even one of these types of yoga. You might want to dig into it even more and just try to center in on even one specific aspect of one of these disciplines. Doing things like that center your information around a topic that is much more closely defined, and it's something you can realistically tackle yourself. And then if you feel like branching out, by all means, start another website and target another area of that discipline. And if you build enough of them, maybe build another website and link them all together. Or scrap all the original ones and combine it all into one. But until you can kind of lay out the pieces of that kind of a groundwork for a much larger website, you'll get much better results and see them a lot faster by going after those smaller pieces. Now I have a page here that is not one of my normal slideshows. This is actually just an image. But I really wanted to include this on here because it is very relevant to the types of yoga that I was just talking about. And even though it might have a few kinds on here that I did not mention, it just so happens to have Pilates on here, while everything else is yoga-based. This is from yogatrail.com. Have to give them some credit for putting this together. Yoga Trail is a place that you can go to find yoga studios and instructors and even different types of yoga events that are taking place throughout the country. So the events themselves on that website, something I'm going to be talking about in a little while here. Events is one possible way that you can go about attracting traffic for a yoga or even Pilates website, because there are a lot of these conventions out there that are teaching not only students of these disciplines, but they're also training the instructors. So, imagine if you can get your website full of yoga instructors. They would be much more likely to buy products from you because they need to supply their business. And if you can find some good deals for them on Amazon, they might even take a whole pile of them. So the point here with this particular image is you start in the middle and you ask yourself the question that you're on, and then you move yes or no based on your answer. And depending on your yes and no answers as you progress through this web of questions here, you'll end up at a type of yoga that is recommended for you. Or you might even end up at Pilates. So depending on what kind of yoga, or whether you're trying to go for Pilates here, whatever you're trying to target, see if it is on this chart and follow the questions from whatever kind you're interested in all the way back to the beginning. For example, with Pilates, if I go up here, do you like to go with the flow? No. Do you enjoy philosophy? No. Do you love to look at yourself in mirrors? No. Do you like to get really sweaty? Yes. Do you want your heart to be really open? No. And then it goes two ways from here. Do you mind guys? Or do you like to be around dudes? Are you pregnant? Are you a woman? So one is for guys and one is for girls. So if you have a woman that is not pregnant, they don't mind being around guys, they don't want their heart to be open, but they do like a good workout, they don't like looking at themselves in mirrors, and they don't like the philosophy side of it, and they don't like going with the flow, Pilates is for that kind of a person, according to this chart, at least. Of course, obviously, this does seem to be a little more favored towards yoga. So, take it with a grain of salt, but I thought it was some really interesting information that might be useful to you depending on what type of subniche you are trying to go after here. So the next thing I want to talk about is yoga poses and postures. Since this is the area of the discipline that a lot of people that are practicing yoga are actually exercising. This is the part of the sutra that they're actually following, is the poses and the postures. So I wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight on this for just a minute and talk about it. Poses make for yet another unique aspect to yoga that offers some interesting targeting opportunities to affiliates. And that is because typically the poses, a set of poses, maybe a single pose, is often geared towards a specific type of purpose. I like to think of it like this. Think of almost anything in your everyday life, and there is likely a yoga pose for improving it or making it better. And here are just a small sample of some pose type examples. Things like poses to break bad habits, warming poses for winter, poses to soothe holiday stress, detoxifying poses for after when you've been overeating, poses to cultivate gratitude after the holidays. Just some examples that I was able to pull off of yogajournal.com, a website that I'm going to be talking to you guys about here in just a minute. Now, obviously, I'm not much of a yoga guy. In fact, I've never tried it before, but the reason why I know of the popularity of yoga is because I actually just happened onto a yoga journal event for yoga that was taking place. I was staying at the Diplomat Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with my wife for our anniversary. And it just so happened that that weekend at the Diplomat Hotel, Yoga Journal was holding a yoga event. And this thing was huge. I mean, the building that they had this thing hosted in was absolutely massive. It could have been a hotel all in itself. It was a building connected to this hotel. And these people took over this hotel. They had about 75% occupancy in the entire hotel for the weekend. I was actually also able to talk with a security guard that was working later that evening, and I found out that the conference area that this yoga journal company was renting out for this yoga event cost not in the thousands of dollars, but into the millions of dollars to rent it out for a whole weekend. And then me and my wife are in the hot tub downstairs out at the pool, and a young lady comes and sits in the hot tub with us, and she's actually a staff member for Yoga Journal. So I got to get a little bit of inside information from her as well. You have a lot of yoga instructors that are going to these types of events to learn all of these new poses that they're coming out with, because they're coming out with new poses all the time, and essentially anybody can do it. So they have these official things where you get trained on these official poses for all these different types of purposes. And so you have the instructors that are coming out en masse for these types of events. However, you still have your normal types of students. Everything from an entry-level person that has just gotten into yoga and they just want to learn a little more, all the way to your hardcore person who just can't go a single day without yoga. Now, the other really interesting thing that I got to find out was that Yoga Journal is one of the largest, if not the largest, company that is doing this type of thing. They have a website, yogajournal.com, and then they also have yjevents.com. The events is about their different yoga events that they hold, and then the Yoga Journal is more of a blog about yoga. And they have an immense amount of followers. So not only do the people attending these events consume information like crazy and constantly, but for things like these Yoga Journal events, they pay a really pretty penny just to be able to attend them. Just a single day pass, I want to say, that lady told me was $300 to $500 or something like that, and then a weekend pass for the 4-day event was much more than that, obviously. So people are putting out a lot of money for this type of niche. They are extremely interested in it. They are regularly consuming information on it. And there are all kinds of associated products that go along with yoga. A lot of people that are practicing yoga are trying to live a certain type of lifestyle, especially people that might get into a certain type of yoga besides just the one that covers the exercise. They're getting more into the mind, body, and spirit aspect of it. So depending on what you're trying to go after, that's why it's important for you to learn as much about it as you can so you know the appropriate things to try to go after. There's a certain type of yoga where you're supposed to be a vegetarian, for example. And they have all different kinds that are really out there and geared towards different types of people. So I would encourage you to use yogajournal.com to learn some information about yoga in general or about a specific type of yoga. On this Yoga 101 page right here, yogajournal.com/category/yoga-101- This page here is a good listing page for you to begin on. If you look a little ways down the page, there's a Speak Yogi section, a page that says Essential Sanskrit Dictionary. That page has a listing of something like 200 yoga terminology words. Over on the right-hand side of the page, you have a little Yoga 101 index where you can find information about some of the different types of yoga, basics, spirituality, more about terminology, history, chakras. There's all kinds of different aspects of this that you can dive into. So much more than I could possibly hope to teach you within a 30-minute to an hour niche training class. Now the YJ Events site. I wanted to give you this because these events that they put on, and there are also other companies that put on similar types of events in yoga and also in the Pilates industry. You can provide information for consumers about these events, especially the ones that are recurring. If they're going to take place basically at the same place in the same time of the year every single year, and they're going to keep happening like that, like clockwork, they can be really, really great to target. I just happened to notice on yjevents.com that in 2015, in November, they are hosting another Yoga Journal event at the Diplomat Hotel that I stayed at. And it's really, really close to the same date, too. So it's a pretty safe bet that they're shooting for the same time of the year, maybe even the same month for those specific events, and they do them in the same locations. So you post some information on your website about these events, and then every single year when these events are rolling around and people are searching for information about them, your website is there as one of the potential sites that might be able to intercept them and give them some information about them. And you know, when you get people on your website that are interested in a Yoga Journal event, chances are they do yoga, and chances are they would probably buy a yoga-related product off of Amazon. Another thing you can think about doing is with Yoga Journal, since they are incredibly active with their postings, you can actually have a section of your site where you post regular reviews of their post. You're essentially critiquing them, something that you see done on the internet all the time. A TV show will come on, somebody has a website talking about that TV show, making a discussion out of it, essentially. You can do the same types of things with Yoga Journal. Just do not take their exact content. All of your writing should be in your own words, and give them some link love. Whenever you write a review post about one of theirs, then put a link within that post to their article. And then Yoga Journal is accomplishing one of the goals that they want to accomplish with those. They're getting more exposure on the internet from the yoga community, and you're accomplishing something because by kind of latching yourself onto not necessarily the popular name of them, but you're latching yourself onto the popular topics that they are talking about. If you have a really popular website and 1,000,000 people look at an article about a very specific topic, or if 1,000,000 people see a news story about a specific topic, I guarantee you there are search engine searches happening that day and even into the far future for those exact topics that are generated off of media and your other popular content-based websites. So when you latch on to these types of topics, you can sometimes run into a flood of search engine traffic when Google Keywords says there's no traffic for that keyword, because any new keyword that starts getting a lot of traffic, it has to start somewhere. And media in your popular content websites is one major source of these types of topics and new keyword phrases beginning to take shape and gain their popularity from the popular topics that are discussed on these websites. Now, one of the last things that I want to talk to you about here is Pilates. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, it is obviously not as complex as yoga is, nowhere near, in fact. But there are still some key things that you should know as an affiliate to have a little bit of direction with trying to target something within this industry. Now, you have two main types of Pilates. However, you do have a bunch of derivatives of those two main types, which are typically called contemporary. However, you have classical, which is the Pilates essentially invented by the original guy, Joseph Pilates. And then you have modern, which is typically considered to be derived from the teachings of the first generation students, the people that the Pilates guy taught himself. They then, at least some of them, went on to begin teaching Pilates on their own, but they kind of meshed it and formed it a little to fit their own needs or whatever they were preferring. So you ended up with all these different types of Pilates as a result. But people can go out there and teach Pilates. You could even invent your own form of Pilates without any kind of formal training or instruction. However, with yoga, a lot of times you have certified yoga instructors, and a lot of these different events are typically offering the training that those yoga instructors are getting to be able to continue their practices. Another reason why those events are so big. So with Pilates instead, the focus is more on the exercising. It's not more about the spiritual aspect like yoga can sometimes get into. Your knowledge of the different exercises to do and the equipment to perform the exercises are two of the key aspects to Pilates. And this is really important to Amazon affiliates because this is the part that is going to involve your product sales. You can promote different Pilates courses that are available that are teaching these different kinds of exercises. Same thing with yoga, for that matter. You can be promoting courses that are teaching different yoga poses or different yoga techniques or even entire branches of yoga. Same thing goes with Pilates, except your availability in terms of the different kinds is going to be much, much less. And then the equipment obviously is going to be a potential big seller for you in the Pilates industry, because no matter what kind of Pilates somebody is doing, chances are they're going to need not just one, but a number of different pieces of equipment. I believe the original Joseph Pilates program involved something like 6 different apparatuses that were used. And a lot of the modern Pilates courses, have come up with their own types of apparatuses. Some of these are really large and may only be feasible in a gym type of setting, which is why you do have these Pilates classes in actual retail business locations. Something like what you see here on the screen. You have these large stretching contraptions and things like that that help you to perform these exercises a lot of times. But then you also have, especially with more modern Pilates, it's kind of been more geared towards the home consumption market, people that want to not go out to a class and want to just buy some stuff and exercise in the comfort of their own home. You have a lot of different things like that that are certainly geared towards people at home and are much smaller and a lot of times more affordable than a lot of the larger original contraptions. Another interesting thing is that since the year 2000, the rights to the Pilates name, the intellectual property, and also to his apparatuses essentially became public domain thanks to a lawsuit. Joseph Pilates died in 1967, and in the year 2000, the Pilates name was essentially deemed to be commonplace, a common word used for a type of product and not necessarily a brand. Joseph Pilates himself actually called his workout routine by a completely different name. He didn't call it Pilates. So that may have even had something to do with that there. But obviously nowadays, Pilates is the big money name, and people can use it freely without worry of legal recourse. So this means that, yes, you can use the word Pilates in a domain name if you want to. You can even create your own Pilates course and Pilates equipment and slap the name Pilates on it. All 100% illegal to do since the year 2000. Now, along with this training, I have a number of other resources that I'm providing you guys that are going to help you out to give you a jump start on this niche. I have 5 product review videos on yoga and Pilates related products, a little bit of a spread of everything there. You're more than welcome to use those however you see fit. However, uploading them to YouTube is not something you'll be able to do since they are being made available to more than just one person. There is also a text file that is going to have Pilates and yoga event sites in it. This is an excellent resource if you want to be able to provide some of that informational content, or maybe you just want to do a little bit of poking around and learn about some of the different popular aspects and popular types of yoga that these sites might be focusing on. Obviously, if there's enough popularity in something for them to run a conference in the USA for it, chances are you could build a website for that same topic. Now, you also have a Pilates and yoga product research spreadsheet. This is broken down into 4 different categories to help you locate the relevant kinds of products for whatever it is you're planning on promoting. There's equipment and clothing. Some of these may work for both Pilates and yoga, while others are specifically geared towards one. You also have courses on Pilates and yoga, and these are separate. These products that are picked out also are the products that are used for these 5 product review videos. So if you're looking for more information about what these products are in the videos, you will be able to find the titles in one of these 4 categories in the product research spreadsheet. Now, by all means, certainly do not limit yourself to just the products that I have picked out here. If you can make your own product review videos, great. Figure out what kinds of products you want to promote, pick out those specific ones, and make some videos to specifically target them for yourself. If not, you can always build review pages on your website, completely article-based or using a combination of articles and images. Whatever works best for you to try to approach these products, but branch out from the product research that is provided here and make sure you're selecting the most relevant stuff to your purpose to match up with the sub-niches that you have decided to target.